My parents invited me to a family vacation and left me stranded to pay the $12,000 bill. So I cut them off and filed a restraining order after they tried to destroy my reputation. I, 28M, am still processing the events that happened over the past few months that completely shattered my relationship with my parents. Like most stories involving entitled parents, this one has been building up for years, but the breaking point came during what was supposed to be a family vacation that turned into a financial nightmare. Some context. I work as a restaurant manager at a mid-size establishment. The pay is decent, and I've managed to build up some savings over the years despite my parents' constant attempts to borrow money from me. They've always been terrible with finances, maxing out credit cards, taking loans they can't repay, and guilt-tripping their children into bailing them out. My sister cut contact with them 3 years ago after they tried to convince her to take out a second mortgage on her house to help them start a business. I should have seen that as a warning sign. Last December, my parents called me excitedly about planning a week-long family vacation to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. They claimed they had been saving up for it and wanted to treat the whole family to a luxury resort stay in Hawaii. They even showed me their savings account with $15,000 set aside specifically for this trip. I was skeptical at first, but seeing the actual savings made me think they had finally gotten their act together. Plus, they kept emphasizing how this was their treat to make up for all the times they had to borrow money from me. The plan included my parents, me, my sister, who declined, and my aunt, mother's sister. We booked the flights and resort for May. Everything was arranged through my father's credit card, or so I thought. The total came to around $12,000 for the four of us, including flights, resort stay, and pre-booked activities. My father insisted on handling all the bookings himself, to make it special. The first red flag appeared when we reached the resort. The front desk couldn't find our reservation under my father's name. After some confusion, we discovered it was under my name. My father quickly explained that he used my name because he wanted to surprise me with upgrade options. It didn't make sense, but I was tired from the flight and didn't want to start an argument. The next morning around 6 a.m., my phone started buzzing with alerts. 3 missed calls from my bank's fraud department, 2 from my credit card company, and several text alerts about unusual activity on my card. When I called back, the representative explained that a charge for $12,000 had been processed yesterday for the resort booking. I checked my banking app. There it was, the entire vacation package charged to my credit card, not my father's as promised. As I spoke with the representative, the pieces started falling together. 2 months ago, my parents had stayed at my place for a weekend to help me organize after I mentioned being busy with work. I remembered my mother insisting on cleaning my home office while I was at work. She must have gone through my filing cabinet where I kept old statements. The rep confirmed the booking was made online using my card details, billing address, and even the security questions were answered correctly. Of course, my mother would know my first pet's name and the street I grew up on. What made me feel even more stupid was remembering how my father had asked to use my laptop to check their flight details the day before we left, claiming his phone wasn't working properly. He must have accessed my password manager where I stored my card details. I always thought I was being paranoid when my sister warned me about securing my personal information from our parents, but she had learned this lesson the hard way years ago. My hands were shaking as I got dressed and headed to the hotel restaurant where we had planned to meet for breakfast. They were already there, acting completely normal, as if they hadn't just committed credit card fraud. I placed my phone on the table, showing the charge notification. "Want to explain this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "And maybe explain how you got my credit card details while you're at it?" My mother didn't even look surprised. Instead, she gave me that condescending smile I'd grown to hate over the years. "Oh, honey, we thought you understood," she said with that sickeningly sweet voice she uses when she's trying to manipulate someone. "When we said we were treating the family, we meant we were organizing it. You're doing so well financially, and we really needed that savings for other things. Besides, we had to use your card since your father's isn't. Well, let's say it's not in the best shape right now. And don't be dramatic about the card information. Parents should have access to their children's finances in case of emergencies." I was stunned. "What other things?" "You show me the savings account." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we had to pay off some urgent debts. But think of this as an investment in family memories. Plus, you can afford it. You're single with no kids." That's when I noticed my aunt avoiding eye contact. Turns out she knew about this plan all along. They had convinced her to come by promising her a free vacation at my expense. The $12,000 charge had maxed out my credit card, and they expected me to just accept it because family. I immediately called the front desk to understand my options. Since everything was in my name and charged to my card, there wasn't much they could do. I then called my credit card company to dispute the charges, but since I was physically present at the resort, using the room and services, they couldn't help either. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I informed the front desk that only my room was authorized on my credit card. I had them remove my parents' and aunt's key cards and transfer them to separate reservations. The look on their faces when their keys stopped working was priceless. "You can't do this to us," my mother wailed in the lobby. "We're your parents. Where are we supposed to go? You can either pay for your rooms or find somewhere else to stay," I replied calmly. "I'm not funding this vacation." What followed was a spectacular meltdown. My mother started crying dramatically in the lobby, while my father threatened to disinherit me. My aunt tried to guilt-trip me about ruining their vacation. I stood firm. My father tried to play it off as if I was overreacting. "Look, we knew you'd say no if we asked directly. But now that we're here, let's just enjoy the vacation. You can put it on a payment plan if money's tight." That's when my aunt chimed in. "Your parents worked hard to raise you. The least you can do is treat them to a nice anniversary vacation. When I was your age, I would have been honored to do this for my parents." I stood up, my decision made. This isn't about the vacation. This is about identity theft and credit card fraud. You stole my personal information, accessed my accounts without permission, and charged $12,000 without my consent. My mother's face changed instantly from sweet to threatening. "You wouldn't dare report your own parents to the police. Think about what that would do to our reputation in the community. Besides, who do you think they'll believe, loving parents or an ungrateful son?" I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd already sent to my bank detailing exactly how they obtained my information and made the charges. Their faces went pale. "What you've done is credit card fraud," I said, pulling up their text messages from December where they explicitly stated they were paying for the trip. "I've spoken to the hotel management and my credit card company. You have 1 hour to either pay for your own rooms or leave. The hotel has already agreed to separate the charges." My father exploded. "This is outrageous. We'll tell everyone what an awful son you are. We'll call your workplace. We'll make sure everyone knows how you abandoned your elderly parents in Hawaii." "I'm not the one who committed fraud," I replied. "But please call my workplace. I'm sure they'd be very interested to hear about attempted blackmail on top of everything else." They stormed off to their room, presumably to pack. My aunt followed, muttering about ungrateful nephews. I thought that would be the end of it, but I severely underestimated their entitlement. 30 minutes later, the hotel manager approached me. My parents had called my sister, claiming I was having a mental breakdown and needed family intervention. They tried to convince the hotel that I was mentally unstable and they needed access to my room for my own safety. Fortunately, I had already warned the front desk about potential interference and showed them my documentation of the fraud. The manager was incredibly understanding, helped me arrange to move to a different room in case they had made copies of the key cards. He also had security escort them off the property when they refused to pay or leave. I thought being kicked out of the resort would be their rock bottom, but I was wrong. Over the next few days, while I tried to salvage what was left of my vacation, they launched an all-out smear campaign. They called my workplace claiming I had stolen their retirement savings. They posted on social media that I had tricked them into a vacation and abandoned them. They even showed up at my sister's house, despite having no contact with her for years, to try to get her to talk sense into me. The final straw came when I returned home to find them camped outside my apartment. They had told my neighbors I was withholding their medication and social security checks, neither of which was true. They're both in their mid-50s and employed. When I refused to engage and tried to enter my apartment, my mother grabbed my arm and began wailing about elder abuse while my father recorded it on his phone. That's when I started documenting everything. I set up cameras outside my apartment, saved every voicemail, screenshot every social media post, and recorded each encounter. I filed a police report about the credit card fraud and their harassment. The officer who took my report advised me to seek a restraining order, given their escalating behavior. My sister helped me find a lawyer who specialized in both fraud cases and restraining orders. He advised me to send them a formal cease and desist letter first, which would strengthen our case for the restraining order. We sent it via certified mail to create a paper trail. Their response: they've ramped up the harassment. They began calling my restaurant multiple times during peak hours, telling customers I had stolen from them. They created multiple social media accounts to bypass my blocks. The final straw came when they convinced my aunt to file a false report with Adult Protective Services, claiming I was stealing their retirement funds. My lawyer helped me file for a temporary restraining order, TRO. We had substantial evidence: the credit card fraud documentation from the hotel and my bank, recordings of them admitting to taking my car details during the Hawaii confrontation, surveillance footage of them harassing me at my apartment, phone records showing hundreds of calls, screenshots of their social media harassment, and statements from my neighbors and coworkers about their disruptive behavior. The temporary order was granted immediately. When we went to court 2 weeks later for the permanent restraining order hearing, my parents showed up with their own lawyer, clearly expecting to talk their way out of it. They tried to paint themselves as concerned parents trying to help their troubled son. But their story fell apart when my lawyer presented the evidence chronologically, starting with a credit card fraud and ending with a false APS report. The judge was particularly interested in the Hawaii incident. He asked my parents directly how they obtained my credit card information. Their lawyer tried to intervene, but my father proudly declared they had every right to access my financial information as my parents. The judge's face darkened at that response. The permanent restraining order was granted for 3 years. It prohibits them from coming within 100 yards of my home, workplace, or person. They're also barred from contacting me through any means, including through third parties like my aunt. The judge also strongly advised them to seek counsel about the credit card fraud, warning that their actions constituted identity theft and financial abuse. My credit card company finally reversed the charges after getting the police report and court documents. They also helped me lock down my credit and set up additional security measures. I've changed all my passwords, got new cards, and installed a security system at my apartment. As for my parents, they're now telling family members that I manipulated the legal system to avoid supporting them. My sister just laughs and reminds me that's exactly what they said when she cut contact. She's been my rock through all of this, helping me stay strong when I occasionally feel guilty about getting the restraining order. It's been 3 months since the court hearing. Last week, my aunt tried to contact me through a coworker, saying my parents have learned their lesson and want to reconcile. I simply forwarded the message to my lawyer. Any attempt to circumvent the restraining order gets documented. I'm done letting them manipulate and guilt trip me. Looking back at everything that's happened, I realized this Hawaii trip wasn't really about a family vacation or their anniversary. It was about control. They tried to trap me with debt, thinking I'd have no choice but to keep funding their lifestyle. When that failed, they tried to destroy my reputation and career. Each escalation was a desperate attempt to force me back under their control. The restaurant's doing well, and I've been promoted to senior manager. Turns out my boss was impressed by how professionally I handled the situation when my parents were harassing the business. My sister and I are closer than ever. We have weekly dinners where we can finally talk openly about our childhood without fear of backlash. I've started seeing a therapist to work through everything. She's helping me understand that getting the restraining order wasn't just about stopping their harassment. It was about finally standing up for myself and saying enough is enough. I don't know what will happen when the restraining order expires in 3 years. What I do know is that I'm no longer the person who can be manipulated by guilt trips and family obligations. Sometimes the most difficult boundaries to set are the ones that protect us from the people who should have protected us in the first place.